Strap in, because we're about to take on a black belt recipe. But I promise you, this uniquely rich cookie is worth a few broken bones. Combine 1 cup of softened unsalted butter, 1 tightly packed cup of dark brown sugar, and a half a cup of granulated sugar. Once thoroughly mixed, add your 2 eggs. Next up is 1 tablespoon of unsulfured molasses, followed by 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Unless a recipe specifically says not to, I always combine my dry ingredients in its own bowl and then incorporate it into the dough. This is by far the best way to ensure that every bite of your cookie has an even mix of the spices. And that's what we're gonna do here, starting with 2 cups of flour. Add half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1 tablespoon ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon ground ginger, 1 teaspoon kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of ground nutmeg, and finally 4 teaspoons of baking powder. Now mix it all together with a whisk. Combine it with your dough a little bit at a time. Why did I pick this recipe? I say with dismay. I'm running out of time and I need cookies the next day. I'm impossibly specific and my sanity will pay. Oh, why do I have to be this way, be this way? Oh, why do I have to be this way? All right, let's add 3 cups of old-fashioned oats. You can run your oats through a processor to make them a little finer if you wish. I think it's time for a secret ingredient. And what this tough guy recipe needs is a little bit of nice. Woohoo! Now's a good time to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. It's not necessary, but it definitely helps if you use a spring-loaded scoop, especially when making a sandwich cookie because it will ensure that the top and bottom pieces are exactly the same size. These cookies do flatten and spread a little bit, so make sure you give them at least 2 inches between each cookie. Pop them in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes or until they turn golden brown. Now to get started on our super fancy buttercream frosting. Cook 4 large egg whites over a double boiler. Add a cup of granulated sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Continuously whisk the mixture until all of the sugar is completely melted. This should take about 5 minutes, but pop a thermometer in and once it reads 158 degrees Fahrenheit, your mixture's done. From here, we're gonna beat our mixture until it thickens. At this point, our mixture is still pretty warm, and while we're beating it, it's gonna start cooling it off, and we need that to happen before we can start adding the butter. After 2 to 3 minutes, you'll notice it's thickening and it's also cooling off. Once it's cooled, you can start adding your butter a few chunks at a time. Make sure your frosting is smooth before you add more butter. Drop in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now, beat your mixture until you get nice, stiff, fluffy peaks, similar like in a meringue. I had to move to the standing mixer because my hand mixer just wasn't cutting it. Add 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. The recipe says that's optional, but why not? Once combined, set aside so we can make our spiced rum caramel. In a medium saucepan over medium heat, melt your 1/4 cup of butter. Add 3/4 a cup of light brown sugar to your butter. And 1½ teaspoons of corn syrup. Give it one really good stir to make sure that everything's mixed in, and then let it cook for 2 minutes. When 2 minutes is up, stir in 1/4 a cup of heavy whipping cream. Let your caramel come to a boil, and this time you can stir occasionally. Add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Be careful because it'll make the caramel sizzle. A little bit of warning, when you add your 1½ tablespoons of spiced rum, you need to do it a little bit at a time because the caramel has a tendency to splash out. If you thought hot glue gun burns were bad, try hot caramel. Now you're just gonna let your caramel cook for 8 to 9 minutes or until your thermometer reads 230 degrees Fahrenheit. When you're good, remove your caramel from heat and let it sit until it cools slightly but still remains pourable. If your buttercream was sitting for a little while or was refrigerated, give it a quick beating before you use it again. And now we can add our final ingredient to this spiced rum buttercream. If you had to store your caramel in the refrigerator for any reason, make sure you warm it up in the microwave in 15-second intervals before adding it to your buttercream. Beat it with a hand whisk until all of the lumpiness is gone. Somehow this buttercream with all of these heavy ingredients manages to be the lightest and fluffy buttercream I've ever had. Let's toss this buttercream in a piping bag and assemble our cookies. We'll start by flipping one chewy, delicious oatmeal cookie upside down on our plate. Then using a piping bag with a small tip, lay down a layer of your buttercream frosting. Then top it off with another chewy, delicious oatmeal cookie. Just take a moment to admire your masterpiece. When you're ready to kick your slightly sinister holiday season up a notch, attack this boss level recipe. I promise, it's worth it.